the one, the only, Ben Good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube, just Daf It. Perhaps the final Friday. I think next Friday we'll be starting with Sota. So we're doing Nazir Daf Samach, number 60. A great share for you today. A little difficult share, a lot difficult share, but with me, it's very simple. Just Daf It, just do it. Whatever you get, you get. It doesn't make a difference. As long as you get that Ben Sion experience. All right, let's start from the Mishnah on the bottom, and then Amud Beis. Nazir, we've talked about this before. It's a little confusing, but I'll try to explain it as best as I can. Nazir Shayatame B'Safek. He's a Nazir. He's not sure if he came in contact with corpse tumah. Umuchlat B'Safek. Not only is that, he's not sure if he has saras. Ochel B'Kodshim Achar Shishim Yom. He has to wait 60 days before he's Kodshim. After 120 days, you're going to see he has to do certain things during these, after every 30 days. After 120 days, he is free to drink wine. His Nazir is over. The reason that he has to wait so many days is because since he's a Safek Mitzora, normally a Vadai Mitzora, we learn that his shaving his head, which you do at the completion of your Tzaras, is docha the Nazir. So Nazir is not allowed to shave his head, not allowed to cut his hair. However, if you are Masorah Vada, you are, but Masorah Safek, not. And here I'll explain why Masorah Safek is not. Like the Mishnah assumes it's Pashat. Why is it not true, right? Safek Daraisa L'Chomra. If Safek Daraisa L'Chomra tells me you have to go L'Chomra, you treat him as a Matzorah, so therefore Essay Docha Losa say the essay, the Mitzvah essay, should be docha the losa say of cutting your hair as a Nazir. Now, the reason he has to 60 days, just explain this simply, 60 days, since he's a Safek Nazir and a Safek Mitzorah, so therefore, the first 30 days, right, he might be a Mitzorah, he might be a Nazir, so he can't cut his hair, so he has to wait 30 days to, if he was Tameh as a Nazir. Now he has a Naziris of Tara, 30 days Naziris of Tara. So therefore he can cut his hair. He can cut his hair because he finished a Naziris of Tara, 30 days, he didn't come in contact with Mesa. However, Matzorah actually has to shave his head twice. So therefore he has to observe another 30 days because maybe he actually was a Nazir Tameh, and therefore the first 30 days was just when he shaved his head at the end of 30 days, that was just the end of Naziris Betuma. Now he's another Naziris Betar, he has to observe for 30 days. And he can't shave his head in the middle because he's a Safek Tzaras. And therefore at the end of 30 days, so therefore whether he's a Nazir, he was a Nazir who was Betami, or Nazir Betara, it doesn't matter. After 60 days, he's no longer a Nazir, he can shave his head a second time to end the Tzaras. At the end of the Tzaras. The problem is that if you actually were a Mitzorah, the first 6 days do not count towards your Naziris. Like we learned in the previous Mishnahs, if you're a Mitzorah, you can't count those days. They don't dismantle the count, but you can't count those days as in Naziris Tara and Naziris Tumah. So therefore, days number 60 through 90, he has to observe maybe he's a Nazir Tahor. He never came in contact with it. So therefore, he has 30 days of Naziris to fill his Naziris of 30 days. But maybe he was Nazir Tameh, so therefore after 90 days he's shaving his head. That was the end of Naziris Betuma. And therefore another 30 days, 120 days, on the possibility it was another Tameh, and now the last 30 days is for the Nazir Betara. So therefore, after 120 days, not only is Saras over, his Naziris is over, and therefore he could shave his head and bring the Karbanos, and he can start drinking wine in time on the Mesa. That's a simple explanation of the Mishnah. I hope you got it. It's pretty clear. The Gemara says, Samach and Aleph Tana, but Medor Amurim, you like the background noise. It's apparently a Yom Tov over here because Bein Azmanim over here. It's not enough that the guys learn during the Zman. Now they're learning Yeshivas Bein Azmanim. They pay big money here to learn Yeshivas Bein Azmanim. Learning never stops. But they realize if they're learning Daf Yomi, it also never stops. But no one throws me any parties. Gemara says, Tana, Medor Amurim, Naziris Muetes. What is the Mishnah talking about? Naziris Muetes, a 30-day Nazir. That's why 4 periods of 30 days, 120 days. Now, Naziris Bas Shana, if you pledge Naziris for a year, right? right? Just multiply it, right? It's the same exact way we described, but you have to fulfill your Naziris of a year. So multiply that by 4 times 4 years. After 2 years, you can eat kachim. Your tzaras is for sure over. The Nazir is not over until 4 years. Tani Allah said about this brisa, Megaleach arba taglachios. He shaves his head 4 times, like he described in the Mishnah. Taglach is Rishona. What karbonis does he bring when he shaves his head? After 30 days, he shaves his head. Maybe siporim mechatas the olas behema. He brings siporim. Now, the reason you bring siporim is that Mesorah Muchlat, after his saras, he has to bring 2 birds. 2 birds. One he kills, one he lets fly away, and one he kills and sprinkles the blood in the water and throws that on the mitzorah. So that has to be done 1 time. So the first time it's done, it's done. If he was a mitzaras, it worked. If you don't have mitzaras, you don't need it. The chatas ha'of. The chatas ha'of is brought because a mitzorah after, right, he has to bring, both a nazir, who's tamei, and a mitzorah has to bring a chatas ha'of. Now, a mitzorah usually has to bring a chatas behema. However, if he's a very poor person, he can bring a chatas ha'of. It depends if he's poor or rich. So according to some poskim, he has to actually be mafkir as nechasim, say that he is ownerless. He brings a chatas ha'of. We'll say a chatas ha'of is not a problem suffix because a chatas ha'of could be brought on the suffix. You just don't give the meat to the kohanim. You just bury it. The olas behema, because an ola either could be the end of your naziris, which you'd bring an olas behema. Or if it really was not, this period of 30 days was not the end of your Naziris, right? Maybe till 120 days and you're just not over. So then the Ola could be brought as an Adava. You stipulate. If it's L'chiyav, it's a Chiyav. If not, it's an Adava. It's not bringing Chul Nazara. Siporim is not a problem with Chul Nazara, as we'll see, because the Siporim can be done outside the Beis HaMikdash. Shniya, after 60 days, maybe Chatas HaOf. So he doesn't bring Siporim anymore, because if he's a Mitzorah, you brought the Siporim. You only bring it once. If he's not, you don't need it. The shnia you bring chatas ha'of olas behema. The reason you always bring chatas ha'of. The reason chatas ha'of is because after the second time the mitzorah shaves his head, you have to bring the chatas ha'of. Really bring a chatas behema, but chatas ha'of could work if he is impoverished. And chatas ha'of could also brought then in Nazirus betuma, right? You also bring a chatas ha'of, but it comes al safek it's brought. And again, you sprinkle the blood on the mizbeach, and you don't. And you bury it. You don't let the meat, the chicken be eaten. The olas behema, and you bring olas behema again because of the dava. Shlishis, the 3rd time you shave, maybe chatas ha'of olas behema, the same exact thing again because here is a suffix naziris tuma or suffix naziris tyra. The olas behema is for the tara, and naziris tuma is chatas ha'of. Revi is maybe korban tara. After the 4th one, you're for sure for the naziris, so you bring the shlamim and you bring the chatas. Animals that you bring at the end of the Tara. You'd also bring an Ola and you say, if I already finished my Nazira, so the Ola is an Adava. If not, then the Ola is for the Chova. So the Gemara says, Amar Tkalach is Rishona maybe. The Gemara is going to explain this. Mar of Shach. Shapek Amai. So he's bringing it. The Ivadai Metzora who, Velav Tami who. If he's a Metzora and he's not actually Tami, Sipor and Chavasa, like he explained. Sipor and he has to bring Sipor. The Chatazah of Safik. Chatazah of is a Safik. Azad Lakfura. Doesn't matter. It's not called Chul Nazar. You're allowed to bring a chatas ha'of on the suffix, and you just bury it. You don't let the chicken be eaten by the kohanim. The Ola have you Nadava. The Ola is in Nadava. Assuming you didn't have to bring the Ola, you could just stipulate it should be in Nadava. Ulagalcho toch shiva iyafshar. Right? So after 30 days, you can't let him shave after 7 days, which normally Metzora he shaves once, and they shave after 30 days. Dilmalab mukhlidu. Maybe he's not a Metzora. Rahman Amar Tarlo Yavral Rosho Admlos. Right? Like we say in the Mishnah, Vadai Metzora could shave, but a Safek can't. We'll explain that in Ben Sion. Vila Metzora Vadai happy. If he's not a Metzora Vadai, who Tame, and really he's Tame with he's Tame is Naziris is stop. Chatas Ha'of Chovaso. The Chatas Ha'of, right? He brings the Chova because Naziris Betuma you have to bring Chatas Ha'of. As there's one, you have to bring an Ola and a Chatas Ha'of, and one Chatas Ha'of suffices. B'diavad. Siporin Avrai Kamas Avden. Siporin, right? This is talking about the first shaving of the head. So they're done outside. It's not chulim azar. If he's not a mitzorah, v'lav tamihu, siporin avrai kamasav. The siporin are done outside the base of marriage. It's not a problem with chulim azar. Chadas ha'of, look for chadas ha'of is not necessary because he brings chadas ha'of only if he's tamei. He's not tamei over here. We're going with the possibility he's not tamei here. So Chada comes on a suffix and you bury it. Olas behema have your chavasa. It's olas behema. You stipulate it. It could be your chava. Haboy. Tomorrow says haboy asham. Technically, there's a possibility he's tamei, and you bring a carbon asham, and you could bring that, right? According to Reb Shimon, we'll see. The Gemara says Reb Shimon. That's only according to Reb Shimon. That were maisi umasni. The Rabbanan argue on Reb Shimon. The Rabbanan say asham. The reason asham you can bring out a suffix is because you can stipulate, according to Reb Shimon, you can stipulate it and say if the asham is a chova, it's a chova. If not, then it's a shlomim, because the sprinkling of the blood of an asham and a shlomim are the same thing. That's only Reb Shimon says you can do that. The Rabbanan say you don't do that, therefore we don't do it. Right? The second and third shavings of his head, you don't need to bring birds. Daha avid, we already did the first time. Dilma vada mochlero. Maybe he for sure has saras. Chada l'safek sifro, v'chada l'safek tumaso. Right. So therefore, after the second 30 days, right, you cut his hair to end his saras, and after the 90 days, you do it because maybe he's a Nazir Tameh. And therefore, right, the first 6 days couldn't count for the Naziros because he was possibly a Matzorah. And therefore, the Nazir, the 60 through 90 is for the Naziros Batuma, possibility of Nazir Batuma. Tlachas Revi is maybe Korban Tyra Masni. After 120 days, it brings a Korban Tyra, right? The Shlomim and the Chatas, Behema. And he brings the Ola and he makes it tonight. What's the tonight he makes? So, Sap of Samach Hamad Beis, V'yivadai Nazir have who Ola Rishon Achova. If I was already a Nazir, so, and I already finished my Nazira. So the Ola I brought previously, I brought the first 3 times, after 30, 60, and 90 days, that was a Chova, whatever, and the Vizuna Dava. And this is another, if I was Tameh, or Muchlat, I was both a Metzorah and I was Tameh, who Muchlat, who Ola Harishon and Dava, Vizu Chava. All the previous 3 Olas, the first 30, 60, 90 days, after 30, 60, 90 days, are in a Dava. And this last one's a Chova, but it's a Shar Kamano, and he brings the Shlomim and the Chatas with it. Now the Raisa continues. Tamei Safik Umuchlad Vadai. Let's say we know for sure he has Mitzaras, but we don't know if he has Tuma. So Ochel B'Kachim La'achar Shmoni Yomim. Again, he had adopted Naziris. He became Tamei on the first day of Naziris. So he knows he's a Saras. A Mitzorah Vadai, it's Docha. He allowed to cut his hair during the Naziris. So therefore, first he needs 7 days to purify himself from the Saras. On the 8th day, right, he could shave his head. This shows. And after 67 days, then he concludes his Naziros. He can drink 1 time on the mason. The reason this being, because after 8 days, right, the first day he shaves his head. After 8 days, he has to shave his head. But then, right, since he's a Metzorah Vadai, so he can't start counting against Naziros until after 8 days. Therefore, the first 30 days, maybe he's a Nazir Batuma, right? A Nazir Batuma, right? We're going to see that shaving your head for Tzaras is not, you can't be used shaving your head for Tzaras in order for both things, for both shaving for Tzaras and for shaving for Nazir's Batuma. So therefore, the first shaving of his head after 8 days does not count for Nazir's Batuma. So therefore, he has to observe 30 days, maybe he's Nazir Batuma. Then he shaves his head for Nazir Batuma, and then another 30 days for Nazir Batara. And then after 67 days, 7 plus 60, it's over. Muchlat Safek, let's say he's not sure if he's a Metzorah, but Tamei Vada, he's definitely Tamei. You can eat kosher after 37 days. After 74 days, his Nazir is over. Why? Because we're not sure if he's a Metzorah or not, but he's definitely Tamei. So therefore, he can't shave his head yet because he's only Metzorah Safek, right? Metzorah Safek is not Docha, the lav of Naziros cutting your hair. So therefore, he's definitely Tamei. So therefore, he has to wait 30 days and then shave his head to end his Naziros Batuma. Right? And then another 7 days, right? First he shaves his head 1 time, and then he shaves his head at the end of 7 days, and he purifies himself after 37 days. His saras is over, even if he's a Metzorah, he shaved his head twice. Now you have to wait another 7 days, right? Because you have to start another 7 because, like we said, the hair cutting for the saras does not count as the hair cutting for the Naziris Batuma. So therefore, you have to wait another 7 days to grow his hair, at least 7 days. And the Naziris Batara requires a Gidol Sar of 30 days. The Naziris Batuma requires at least hair that grew 7 days. You have to wait 7 days for your hair to grow. Then shave again, Naziris Batuma, and then another 30 days, after 44 days. and then another 30 days because if you were Tamei, a Nazir Tamei, so therefore Nazir's Betara to fulfill your Nazirs of 30 days. Tamei Vada, the fourth case, Tamei Vada and Mukhlat Vada. He's both Tamei and Mukhlat. So right, his Saras allows him, because it's Vada, he's allowed to shave his head. So after 7 days he purifies himself. On the 8th day, he shaves his head again. And then after 40, like we said, he has to wait 7 days to do the second hair cutting on Saras. And then another 7 days, because again, the hair cutting for Saras does not count as the hair cutting for Tuma, so you have to wait another 7 days to grow your hair. Then shave again for the Tuma, and then that would be 14 days, another 30 days for Nazir's Batara. Shal Talmidav es Rabbi Shimon Yochai. The Talmidim asked Rabbi Shimon Yochai, Nazir Torah Masora, Mahu Sheyigalech Talach Hazakat Olu Lakan Lakan. Right? Really, this question was already answered in our discussion of the Brisa. We said you can't have the same shaving of your head to end your tzaras and to end your Nazir's Betuma. So why can't you? What could it count or not? They asked him, could it count or not? Could shaving your head count for both? Because both at the end of your tzaras and then your Naziris, both Betara and Betuma, right? You shave your head. Amar lahen einam galeach. You can't do it. You have to do two separate haircuts. Amru lo lama. They said why? Amar lahen ilu zela gadel zela haver. If both the tzaras you were cutting your hair, right, to start growing your hair for another 7 days, right, which is really what a tzaras does. And by a Nazir, or both of them on a Havir, which is to remove the hair. A Nazir, when he ends his Naziris, he ends and removes the hair. You would say, good. Akshav Nazir la Havir. The Nazir, at the end of his Naziris, he completes it, he gets rid of his hair, because the whole Naziris is growing your hair. Now you get rid of it, right? You did something wrong. Mitzora, the Gadel, Mitzora, when he shaves his head the first time, right, it's to grow a 7-day growth of hair, and then to shave it afterwards. V'lo talo yemei chaluso. So the Gemara, they persist, they ask, V'lo talo yemei chaluto, talo yemei sifro. Right? It's fine. You want to say the Nazir, right, is really to remove his hair, and the Mitzora is to grow his hair. That's only, right, you make chaluta when he shaved his head the first time, the Mitzora. Right? He wants to grow 7 years. But you made sifro after the 7 days of counting, it's to remove the hair. They both remove the hair. There's still a difference between them. Right? If he cut his hair both of the times with and Mitzora, even after he counts 7 days and cuts his hair again, which is to remove his hair, he cuts his hair before you throw the blood of the animals on Mizbeah. The Nazir, it brings his karbanos, and then he cuts his hair, and then he puts his hair under, right, the burr under the karbanos. So the Gemara persists. The Talmidim asked Rav Shimon again, so it doesn't count l'meisaraso and niruso. Talo l'meisaraso. V'tumaso, not a Nazir Tamei, but a Nazir, not a Nazir Tohar, but Nazir Tamei. Nazir Tamei cuts his hair to start growing it again, and that's Saras also. After he finishes the Mechiluto, again, he cuts his hair to start growing again. If, right, they both shave their head before going to the mikveh, that would be good. You can compare that to Al Tamei, right? Nazir Tamei, L'achar Bias Mayim. He first goes in the mikveh, then he shaves his head. Masar L'fnei Bias Mayim. Masora shaves his head before he goes into the water. Amrulo Yafa Amarta, Shatallo Yemei Sifra and Zeruso, Tali Mechiluto, Tumaso. So now the Gemara is going to really basically say the same thing over again, which is a different way of saying it. We really answered all the questions already. Amrulo Yafa Amarta, they said, you said you're good, Rangamliel. Shalo, or Shimon Yochai, sorry. Yafa Amarta, Shalo Tali Yemei Sifra and Zeruso. The Yemei Sifra is the second cutting of the Mitzora. The Naziruso and Nazir, the Tumas, however, it should work for the Zelagadel. A Nazir Tamei cuts his hair to start growing again, and also he cuts his hair to start growing again for another 7 days. Who Amarlan, he said that Nazir Tar, who Mitzora, Zelagadel, Zelahavir. So if you'll tell me, he really answered first what they didn't ask. Nazir Tar, meaning end of his Nazirus, Mitzora, and the Mitzora, Zelagado, Zelahaver. Nazir Torah removes the hair. Mitzora, after Mechiluto, grows the hair. Even Nazir Tamei, V'hu Mitzora. If, like, he's a Nazir Tamei, V'hu Mitzora, and the Mitzora is also they're both going to grow their hair, Zelafnei Bias Mayim, Zelachar Bias Mayim. Like we said, the Mitzora shaves his head before going to the mikvah. And the Nazir after he comes out of the mikvah. Let's just finish the sugya. The top of Samach Aleph and Aleph. Tanir B'chia, Zelafnei Bias Mayim, Zelafnei Achar Bias Mayim. Basically, just summarizing what we said before, the differences between a Mitzorah and a Nazir is that the Mitzorah, again, shaves his head before going to the mikvah, the Nazir after the mikvah. And in terms of, at the end of his Nazir's Patara, and also you may Sifro, when he finishes the second time he shaves his head by Mitzorah, they're both to remove the hair, but however, they're different. The Nazir shaves his head, the Mitzorah shaves his head before Zrikas Damim, before throwing the blood, and the Nazir after Zrikas Damim, and then he burns the hair under the korban, so therefore they're not similar, you can't compare the two, and therefore one haircut does not count both for Tzaras and for Nazir, you needed separate haircuts. Stay tuned for Yom Ben Sion, we're going to discuss the last line in this Mishnah. We've been saying an assumption that helps understand these brises and Mishnayos, that if you're a Safek Mitzorah, it's not docha the lav of cutting your hair as a Nazir. Why not? Somebody Raisa L'Chumra tells me, I have a mitzvah. Raisa L'Chumra, go L'Chumra. Why not? They're a pretty simple answer to the question if you can't figure it out. But if you want to hear what I have to say about it, stay tuned for Yom Ben Sion coming up next.